recording. Okay. So my name's J. Wolf Schlossberg-Cohen. I've known Charlie Andrews for decades. He's one of my great mentors. And this program is about showing you my work, that I'm actually a real studio artist. Number two, you will see the process of my community-based public art, because I'm also a community-based public art artist. And then you'll see examples of the impact of my community-based public art, which I've been doing for over 20 some years, as well as have almost 80 installations around the country. So it's Wolf Schlossberg-Cohen Studio. Let's see. Transforming places and people through art. Art does make a difference. So I'm going to start with my studio works. I've been painting professionally for 50 years. The painting we see here is of the Alvin Ailey Dance Company. Most of these works you'll see are in private collections. You can see here pieces are floating off the canvas, which is sort of my style, different kinds of non-traditional compositions and structures of the canvas. The husband wanted musicians, the wife wanted the dancers. This is from an iconic Alvin Ailey piece. These are all layers of canvas that have been painted and cut out and heat fused on either canvas or gator boards. All these are based on my sketches that I actually do during performance, so I may be the guy you do not want to sit next to. These are all, again, the cutouts, and it's not a single moment. It is a combination of moments throughout the performance. So a hand gesture here, drapery there, lighting here, create the feeling of the entire performance. If you saw this piece, Revelations, and you saw this painting, you would say, oh yes, that's Revelations. In essence, I'm a portrait painter, but not in a traditional way that you may think of. I also do landscapes. Can you see the red car on here? This is from Joshua Tree National Park in Southern California. Ah, there it is. Little red car to give a sense of scale, and that is also today. The landscape probably looked the same 1,000 years ago. In the sky, you can see details from pottery, details that I got from the Pinto tribe in their collection at Joshua Tree that lived there over 1,000 years ago. And on the upper right, as you see the full painting, which is about 15 feet by 5 feet, you'll see Palm Springs and all the different sites in Joshua Tree. And here's that car again to really give you a sense of how many of those little cutouts I do to give a sense of energy, motion. Most of this is sketched while I'm in the car and someone's driving me. I am not driving, someone's driving me. And here's where it hangs today in Northern California in Petaluma organization, Point Blue, that deals with wetlands from polar zone to polar zone. I do sacred works. This was for a congregation for their Jubilee year, their 50th anniversary. It's a year in the life of the congregation. The Hebrew below took me as many months to do as the entire painting itself. It actually says stuff from the Bible. The arrow shows you where that mother and child are. And it's a year of the life of the congregation, combined with the landscape around there. People are recognizable in here. So the congregation knew it. And then here's the final work, which is about 40 feet by 20 feet. And the arrow shows you, again, the sense of scale where the mother and child are. It's been a very powerful work for this congregation. All my work is based on sketches, watercolors. This was in China, the Lijiang River. If you've been to a Chinese restaurant, see those gumdrop mountains. It's in Guilin, China, which for at least a millennia or so has been a sacred area for artists, poets, thinkers, philosophers. And there's a boat to give it a sense of scale. I was there. All these are done on site. This is Sedona, Arizona. My daughter is adopted from China, so when we went back when she was 10 for the orphanage tour with some friends who also adopted, as the family chronicler, not only did I have to do photographs, but I also do watercolors during all the vacations. And the Khoi were gigantic. This is in the People's Park in Chengdu, China. This is off the coast of Mexico, Solomon's Bay. I do a lot of performing arts. This was when Marin Alsop was head of the Baltimore Symphony. This is the kind of work my mother kept wanting me to do, and then she'd keep the work. She says, "Oh, Jay, let me have this work." I said, "Okay, mother." So she'd have that. I'm an artist in residence with the La Jolla Symphony and Chorus. Just came back from there a couple of weeks ago. They've used my work for raising money as well as for promotional, like here's their program for that season. This was from a concert recently, from a piece by Japanese composer Takemitsu. This woman is actually pulling these fantastically long bolts of cloth, ringing chimes over the audience. It was part of the composition. This is from another group in the Washington area, this wonderful cellist. So again, this is all during performance. This was the Baltimore Symphony's Orc Kids group that works with kids in Baltimore City. It has completely changed the landscape of music learning here. They're playing their bucket drums. I do dance. This is from a company in San Francisco, from Cuba. This is a cutout from Broadway, Savion Glover, bringing the noise, bringing the funk. He's tap dancing to a woman chanting the names of slave ships. So it's not a happy piece, as you can see from the emotion here. When I'm sketching, I'm looking for three things. Talent. I grew up in a family of musicians, so talent is important. They do not have to be famous. I'm hoping they dress better than I do. And three, if they have some kind of interesting character. This was a female violinist from the Haifa Symphony, and I loved her hair, her makeup, and her playing. I've also experimented with my cutout styles. This was an installation, temporary installation, a miniature golf course called the Heidi Heidi Ho Ho, based on Cab Calloway. And it had to be playable, so you put it in a Chu Berry saxophone. In the background, you see the Cotton Club, and below you see the neighborhood in Baltimore where Cab grew up, and it's all made of wood cutouts. Got to see Ravi Shankar before he died. He was extraordinary. And this work's about 5.5 feet tall. Again, these are in private collections, all cutouts, canvas on cutout canvas, heat fuse on canvas. Something about the style of the cutout that allows a great sense of motion, introspection, beauty, thought. I've done a couple of major stained glass installations. This is for a synagogue in Denver. The architect designed it so that for most of the year, during the holiday cycles, people were blinded by the light coming through the windows. So my job with my partner on this was to block the sunlight, but let light in because it's Colorado and people wanted to see out the window. So we did all the windows. This is the upper windows. It's the first sun and moon of creation. This is the first sun, the other panel. It's the first moon, about 35 feet wide, and it's all laminated like your windshield. There's no lead, so even when the sun moves off of it, unlike leaded windows, there's a lot of light. And as you can see the cutouts here, we sandblasted it, so as the sun moves across the congregation, it's like you're in a forest. It's really beautiful. You get shafts of color light. And here are the side windows based on of Kabbalah. Philosophy, Jewish philosophy and mysticism. The bottom part is based on incidents that happened in the congregation. Here they're getting married. A lot of people joined the congregation that began in 1880 through marriage. The upper parts of each of the lower windows were things, landscapes of Colorado. The blank space you see there is actually the sky. And some of you may recognize this guy and all the people down below at Sinai. The glass up above, you'll see a dichroic glass, which is kind of like a rainbow. In Jewish philosophy, the female side of God it's called the Shekhinah. So there's actually, I didn't know this till many years later as an adult, but there's actually a female side of the divine, and sometimes represented by the rainbow. And sometimes my paintings, not me, are with famous people. This was Idris Elba in The Wire HBO series, and there's my painting in the background, a horse jumping. And you may not recognize the guy on the right or the left. The guy on the left is me. When kids see this, they say, "Is that Kennedy, Mr. J?" And I said, "No." And they say, "Is that your son, Mr. J?" And I said, "No." And this painting hung in the White House, and now is in the Presidential Library in Arkansas. Around me are 20-some Secret Service that you do not see. And President Clinton was taller than me, but I knew the photographers, and they tilted the camera. And lo and behold, I'm now 6'4" in this painting, in the photograph here. So this is what I do. So now you know I paint, and I've been doing that for a long time. This is what I want you to understand about my work in community. It promotes community engagement, empowerment, and action through art. And we like to bring divergent communities together and on themes that are important. And it's not just hands on a wall, right? This is really thought out process with really high-end art making that can be innovative and vivid, and also the process of team building and promoting understanding is as important as the final installation. So I'm going to take you through my 3-part process. And you should understand that the process for me and for many creatives is as important as the final work. So there are 3 steps to this, and this happiness you see is not staged. People are actually really happy in the workshop, maybe because it's over, I don't know, but mostly because when they sit in the beginning, they're scared to death. Usually 16 and up, someone has told them they're no good in art, a parent, a teacher, and they've carried this through their life. I find it in singing and art. So here I'm going to show you my 3 steps of how I engage the community to help create work that then I use from them combined with my work to make the final product. The first step is individual writing and group discussion. If you see on their table there, those sort of pinkish sheets, those are the prompts that a core of us would make together for this project. It's actually the most important part of my mural making. What content do you want the participants to reflect on and then to paint on to then show back to the community and the world what we are thinking and what is important to us? And usually it's very quiet because I said people are a little nervous when they see all the paints out there saying, I don't know if I can do this. This was in a group for a project I did called Forest of Hope, which was about 800 people working on it and honoring people going from addiction of drugs or alcohol to recovery. Needless to say, this is one of the most emotional projects I've ever worked on. I love multi-generational projects. This was for a doctor in the Baltimore area, and he had his patients and their families help create the mural project. So after discussion and ideas are generated, then people will do individual painting. We use very low end but healthy paints. This is Blick Student Tempera. Workshops are not about the ability to paint. It's about the ability to think and create, and everyone can do that. Sometimes I have a family workshop where they'll bring food, and it's really wonderful that everybody can get together to do this. Again, they're painting individually based on their thoughts that they generated individually and then discussed at the table. And they're done in all sorts of places with all kinds of people. This was for a hospital. Here, the son was thrilled. The father was there. The father's thrilled that he could paint. Pretty good fish, right? I like this. This was from a project recently in La Jolla, California, with a middle high school, first-generation students from Central America, Southeast Asia, or Central Africa, whose families come from real nightmares. And here, this is what I do with the La Jolla Symphony. We had a quartet with music composed by high school students in this class. And then the kids paint it, and then we do the whole workshop process, and then the final paintings and panels were installed about 4 weeks ago in the Symphony Hall. This was at a graduate class at Johns Hopkins of medical students. And we do this once a year just to push one side of the brain to the other based on solutions for medicine and healthcare industry ideas in urban areas. This was for a group called Healthcare for the Homeless. These are all homeless people here. They were all clients of Healthcare for the Homeless, Maryland's largest provider for medical servicing and assistance for the homeless. It's one of my favorite mural projects of all time. And so you see everyone's engaged. That's another thing. Everyone becomes engaged with this process, even if they're a little hesitant. And everybody's included. This is all about inclusion. So the more workshops we have, depending on budget and each community group I work with, that's fantastic. So that's part 2. We go from the writing, then the painting of ideas, all this again based on those original prompts. And then part 3 is now the team cutouts and collages. That was Miss Joyce from Healthcare for the Homeless. Sometimes I do the exercise where they have to do self-portraits, which I love. If I get to do more than one workshop with them, we will do this. It's very powerful to see how each individual reflects upon themselves. So the final stage, everyone comes together. Even those who told me they couldn't paint are now cutting up their paintings like my studio work, making a collage, a cutout, and creating a final statement, a final artwork based on the team's work. This is very challenging because everybody may have a different point of view, but they have to bring it together. And what they discover is that 1 + 1 equals more than 2. That working together, the work that you thought was just okay as individual painting ends up being really incredibly powerful. This is one of the largest groups I work with, Native American dementia caregivers in Tucson, Arizona, at a conference. We had 220 people. This was also very emotional. And in the Native American communities, it's only been in recent years where dementia has now been considered a disease, not something from somewhere that we shouldn't deal with. This was a home for families who are homeless. And we did a mural for this place. So all ages are involved, from little kids. I've done this from 2-year-olds to 102, from 20 people participating to 1,000 people working with me. This is at a university, people of all backgrounds. Even a little girl running the table here. Don't mess with her. She's in charge of organizing that whole cutout board there. You can see the vividness of it. This was this group at that same school. It's called the Preuss School. It's on the campus of the University of California, San Diego. This project was about how their families got to America. This is about the crossing through the desert to freedom. Also very intense, but very beautiful. And not only do I make people paint and work together, they have to tell the story. So they have to get up in public and talk. All the things that most people do not want to do. And we encourage it in this process. And you can see how engaged and happy they are to talk about this important work that they do together in this brief amount of time. Workshops take about 2.5 hours, including a break, to letting the individual paintings dry. This is again from Healthcare for the Homeless. And this is a lot of times how we're discussing the ideas. Sometimes if I have time, we discuss the individual paintings like here. Sometimes we do it with the boards like you see here. This was the one for the Forest of Hope, where they were discussing their journey from addiction to recovery. And as you know, a lot of people in addiction were stealing from their own families. So the fact that they could all be there with family and friends and that they are not alone, which I think is important for CARES, right? That we're not alone and we're all sort of one step away from homelessness or whatever the challenge is. And coming together is part of the solution and raising the awareness. And this, the pride in the work is always evident. This was, this was from the string quartet that was sketched. You see how quickly teams can come up with really vivid and creative ideas to express what they're viewing and feeling, especially here with music. And now here are examples of how the community works on this. The young man on the left was one of my interns and has now been a full-time artist for many, many years. And every now and then I'm lucky to have him work with me. And here are just volunteers working on the panels. Sometimes it's outdoors. These panels, this is called a parachute cloth, where you paint the cloth and it gets glued to the surface. It's a process I like. It was invented pretty much as it is in the city of Philadelphia, which, as you know, has thousands of murals. And I like it because it can be done in any weather, indoor, outdoor, depending on the weather. And anybody of any age or infirmity can work on it, which I also like. So it's very inclusive. You can be in a wheelchair, you could be 90, you could be 25, but saying, I'm not getting on a scaffold with you, Mr. J. So this way everybody can participate, which is really important because then they become stakeholders in the work. All kinds of communities. Another idea is this was a school that was nearby the community that was doing this process. So it doesn't have to be only your membership. It doesn't only have to be your board, your funders, your community of clients. It could be anybody in the community of Carlisle that wants to work on this project. Charlie had mentioned the different colleges that are there, for example. And it could be anybody that works for you to promote your cause and help find solutions for those who are your clients. The woman in the middle, Miss Gloria, has been with me for many, many years. This is kind of how my work looks when we send it to the community now. This is after I've designed it based on their work. It comes back to the community outlined and color-coded. It looks simple, but it's not really simple. It's kind of complex because you got to find where you're painting. And I ask everyone not to mix in the cups. They have to mix on the panel, as you see this couple doing. And they're yellow and they're green, making a really beautiful green, like a yellow green. And what's interesting is you could give any two people the same two colors to mix and they will look different. And that's what I'm looking for. I try to keep as much of the community creativity as possible. My favorite painters are the youngest painters. These are those parachute cloth panels again, which are just a thin cotton that are primed. Look at that expressionistic painting. It's incredible. And you see the work behind there that are hanging, they're drying for different works. That's how the works look when they come back to me. And then my crew and I in the studio give a final touch to it and outline it. But still everyone can see their work, which is really critical. Here's a quick look at a project that I finished for a group of elementary and middle school students in East Baltimore who are all from Central America, which is a rising community here. And that's how it looks when it comes to my studio. You see the upper part starting to get outlined and finished, and you see in the bottom there on the wall, it's a little unfinished. And that's sort of my process. We overlap, put them together, and do it section by section. Sometimes they're on a big wall like this. This was in San Francisco. Sometimes indoors. All kinds of communities. Like everyone's really happy doing this. I think it's like the revelation that I do have creativity in me, which I believe everyone does. Whether it's how you dress, how you decorate your house, your hair, kind of car you choose. Sometimes they're very intense, but all kinds of people work on the mural. So these are examples now of completed works. The one you see here, this slide, was from a project that I did in Baltimore with a community of, it's a middle-class community of African-American, Hispanic-American, and Orthodox Jewish-American teenage boys who live together, but don't talk to each other. They live in the same community. They might be afraid of each other. They might even hate each other because they never talk to each other. It was my job to bring them together. So it's called Look Again, Understand the Other. Here you see they have no mouths because usually no one's listening to the youth. And actually it was the first time they all came together. It was quite remarkable and it impacted all their lives. Here was a project done recently. This is before, this is a middle high school, Green Street Academy, in a really challenged community in West Baltimore, get kids to go to college. So that's what it looked like before, this coal burning smokestack from years ago that's just there. And this is how we transformed it. The theme was on Black Lives Matter, but also the history of the school in Baltimore, as well as projecting the future and how their graduates will make a difference not only in Baltimore, but the world. This is about 60 feet tall. There's a good shot of it. You're all welcome to go up on that lift with me as long as you wear those safety belts. Up. Okay. There you go. So here we are working on this project in the studio. Some people you may recognize up there. It's Thurgood Marshall, who's from Baltimore. Here we are putting a final protective coating to protect the light. The paint itself is protected. It's acrylic-based artist paint. Here you get a sense of how it sits in the community. This was for a shelter for foster kids, 10 to 18. And we did the entire gym. They thought I was going to do a little something, and we did 4,000 square feet. This was called the Wishes Mural because at the last workshop, we asked everybody, what is your one wish? And one little girl said, I wish my mom would just touch me or hold me once. And here's that little girl sitting on the bed, and I dedicated the entire mural to her of all kinds of loving families. This was on cinder block, so it can really be done on almost any surface. This was a typical Baltimore City school. I call that prison white. We changed this from here to here. It's called the Searching for New and Better Worlds, which was based on a science fiction book that kids read, but also social justice. And look at the innovation the city put in after we put the mural in. Bulletin boards. What a surprise in a public school. This was University of California, San Diego. Not a cheap school, and this looks like a little slum area. It was there for years. We did this for this Thurgood Marshall College that's there. About 5,000 students are part of that college, and transformed this whole area into this. And it's also based on their course called Dimension of Culture, which is about real American history, and it's about past, present, future. This is what it looked like, and this is how it's transformed. And now it's a very popular area. Students study there, etc. It really is transformative for those involved as well as for the place itself. It really makes it iconic. Here is a part about immigration. You see the Statue of Liberty has turned her back on new immigrants. There's not even a torch. And it's how we're getting there, either by the desert, by bridges. But on the bottom right, you see people who are dying trying to get to America. In the cities, people, little children just hanging on literally for their lives. So not everything's about happiness, but everything is about teaching, learning about the other or the cause, and how can we make the world a little bit better. This was for a mural for the Jewish Community Center near San Francisco. This was an area in the back of that never was used. They have a garden, they grow food to give to the hungry, but no one would go here. On the other side of this wall is a big swimming pool, and behind us is the whole building. But until we did this project, no one really went into this courtyard. And this is how we transformed it. It's both ceramic and paint. We had about 800 people work on this. It's called Grow Justice, and there are 5 sections about justice. The one on the left here was about human slavery. So again, you see none of the people have voices because no one's listening. And the little figures up above, on my Jewish work, I always bring the children. There was 1.5 million children murdered in the Holocaust in about 3-4 years. And so I bring them to the work because they never got to do this. So I tell the people who work on this, we don't forget. We try to bring justice to the world. This is about food justice. It's a big issue in California. It's very expensive. And here's what it looks like from above. Even the planters were painted, and they do tours once a month, which is kind of fun. So you see how a place can be transformed. This was a school in South Baltimore, a really challenged community, and this is the entrance to the school, one of those entrances, if you can believe it. It's a handicap ramp there, a handicap ramp that was splintered, warped wood, terrible, and then these metal shacks that are sort of bolted together for classrooms. And this is how we transform that. Every kid should at least have hope when they walk in through school doors. Yes, it shouldn't look like don't come to our building. And this is how we did all that. It was called Kind Words and Kind Deeds. So even the whole ramp, they eventually rebuilt a lot of the ramp for us. All this is based on participants. So here, this is from elementary school kids. So you see the different kinds of works in the same workshop process that can be created. On this one, we had about 300 people working on it. Here's what it looked like before. See all that wood? Oh my God, and bubble gum right on there. Pretty good, huh? On the railing. You see on the blue railing in the front. And that's how it's transformed. Even, this is when we're putting up, even on the right, that's all sort of corrugated metal. The parachute cloth went on there. This is for healthcare for the homeless. They built this wall for me. This was 25 feet by 125 feet, but they didn't tell me it started 20 feet up in the air. So it goes up about 50 feet here. It's become a popular icon now in Baltimore. It's seen by a major roadway, and it's now lit at night. And on the left is what the world should be. Everyone deserves to go home. And on the right, it's the nightmare of homelessness. And in the center, HCH, Healthcare for the Homeless, that's their building. That's where the light is. And all these images, and you see the portrait that we saw earlier in this presentation, Miss Joyce, I put her in there, the hands reaching up for hope. Even the houses are screaming because people don't have homes. You know, quote unquote, the proverbial bum on the bench. We put that there. And little faces below are from their workshop of creating self-portraits. And this gives you a sense of the scale. We're putting the final coating on here. In my studio, you see the different shades of colors. My job of my crew is to try to it's all about the transitions, to keep as much of the color as possible. What I love is the community does better work than I do, really, with the coloring. It's fantastic. And here it is again on location. Here's again the sense of scale, one of my crew members, my fellow artists. And this is how it looks in the city. And finally, this is the reactions. If I told you this, you probably wouldn't believe me, but it's, look, I did that. And this is just from someone took these pictures, and then I started doing this over the years. Reactions to the final works. It's about pride, self-esteem, independence. Look, I'm a team player, inspiration, something from nothing, possibilities, critical thinking, solutions, sanctuary, etc. Look, I did that. This is what happens with participants. And I've now worked with, I don't know, thousands and thousands, probably tens of thousands of participants across the country. Same thing happened. They can't believe they did this. That's what's so fascinating to me. I mean, I heighten it, but even after the workshop, this energy is there. People coming together to make a difference, or just to come together. Doesn't matter if they're little kids. This was a group in San Francisco of preschoolers that these families from all different backgrounds never talked to each other. This was towards the end of the year, of their school year, and then they all, look, they're all buddies now, right? It's a way of bringing all kinds of people together. Here, this young man is explaining this heritage project. It looks really beautiful to you read about the barriers for racism and oppression coming to America as an immigrant. Are immigrant citizens in America? Are we the people if you're an immigrant in America today? Here's some of my crew with a mural we're doing to honor a friend's sister who was murdered. Late at night at Johns Hopkins Graduate School, I make them paint. They seem to be happy. The hospital. I love these kids. It's from all over. It doesn't really matter where it is, who it is. This kind of like, wow, we did this and this is our work and it's here. And this final photo sort of gives you like, wow, all the different generations looking at their work. Art does make a difference. Together we can transform our communities. Okay, I'm going to stop recording.